Today, we're going to do a live build of a $10,000 Agentic AI code system built in Google AntiGravity. If you don't know me, I'm Jose, and I've built AI sales systems for Deloitte, Silicon Valley Bank, and Columbia Business School, and have booked over 400 calls in the past year for my clients. When it comes to cold email systems, it takes dozens of hours to build and to maintain. So the goal of this system is all we need to do is paste one LinkedIn sales nav URL and everything is done for us where the code campaign is activated and sending. In order to do this, we need a couple of different steps. We need to set up the agent environment. We need to have a source of leads. In this case, it will be LinkedIn Sales Nav. We need to scrape the leads off of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. We have to clean and format the data. We have to enrich the emails. And finally, we need to add it to the code campaign. So I'm going to be building this completely from scratch so you could see how it is from start to end. Okay, we're now in AntiGravity and we have to set up our initial agent environment. So let's go ahead and create a new folder. And open. Now we need to paste this agents.md file into Google AntiGravity. Let's go to the upper left corner, new file, and we're going to type in agents.md. And then here in line 1, we're just going to paste the document. You can get this document for free in the description below. And then we want to do a Command S to save. Finally, we're going to execute the agents.md. So let's do that now. Executes agents.md. So we have our temp folder, we have our folder to store our directives, and then we have our folder to store the Python execution code. We are missing the folder to store our API keys. So let's add that. We need env to store API keys as well. We now have our environment set up so we could start building the code email system. Given that we also are using an established LinkedIn Sales Navigator as the lead source, we can also check this off. Next, we need to find a way to scrape the leads, to clean the data, enrich the emails, and then add it to Instantly. Instead of just one-shotting everything, I like to build it in increments as it allows me to bug test in real time. And it tends to do better if you give it specific scopes instead of one giant context, where it can take multiple paths and do things incorrectly. In this case, we want to do the scrape and the data cleaning together, then create the email enrichment, and then finally we'll create the last step to the adding the emails and contacts to the cold email platform. In order to scrape the leads from LinkedIn Sales Navigator, we need to go to Appify and find a scraper that would do that for us. Then add the API key to Google AntiGravity. So LinkedIn. So you can see there's a bunch of different ones we can use. And typically I like to use the ones that are priced on usage, right? In this case, it wants us to have a monthly fee, which we don't need. So let's find another one. Let's take a look at this one, right? 150 a month, and we'll go to this one. And if you look at the pricing, it's about $10 for every 1,000 leads that we scrape, which is pretty cost effective. As a reminder, you can get the agents.md file in the description below. And if you're a B2B company making at least 20K a month and you want either book calls on your calendar or you want Agentic Workflows within your company, there's also a link in the description to book a strategy session with me. Let's go back to AntiGravity and create a directives markdown file we can use to build out the system. We're building out a cold email system where from one LinkedIn Sales Navigator URL, it then uses Appify to scrape the data. Python code then cleans up that data it's formatted correctly. There we want to use Prospero to enrich the emails. And finally, the emails that have been enriched, we want them to automatically be added to instantly. These create a directives document in Markdown format for me to approve, and don't create any of the code until we approve it. This is why it's important to have that initial step-by-step that I showed earlier in the video, because the more clear and the more you're able to break down what you want out of the system and what it should do, the better the results are going to be and the less back and forth you're going to have. So we could see it did get a little overexcited and tried building it even though I told it not to. So I just paused it. If it does, it's not too big of a deal, but I just like to provide as much context as possible. So let's go ahead and do the Appify and the data cleaning portion. Here is the specific Appify scraper. Also, what I like to do is just give it screenshots of the document. Yes, you can give it the link, but I find sometimes when it comes to API documents, it might not be able to grab all of the data. So I'd rather just give it all of the API information it needs up front, so I don't have to go back and forth with any API issues. The way that this specific scraper works is it takes a Sales Navigator URL for the search. It has a parameter to limit. So when we're creating and testing these systems, we don't want to scrape thousands of leads up front, because if there's an issue with the scrape, we just wasted a lot of time and money with it. So what we want to do is limit it to maybe like 20 or 50 searches while we're building and testing it. And once we know that it works, we can then go ahead and scale that upwards. Always start small and then scale beyond that. We have a request ID and then the number of pages. So we can get a max of 2,500 LinkedIn accounts per scrape. This is interesting where it has two specific flows. It does the initial search, and then we need to wait 5 to 10 minutes for it to check the status and then fetch the actual results that was given. So flow 1 basically starts the scrape, and then flow 2 basically gets the data from the scrape. So when we're giving the prompt and instructions on the Appify scraping part, we need to give AntiGravity those specific instructions as well, that we have the limit, that it has two specific flows, and then it then needs to wait 5 minutes, call flow 2. If the data from flow 2 is still not ready, wait another 5 minutes and try 3 times in a row until it gives up. I'm providing the API data for the specific scraper through screenshots and also in this prompt. For this testing period, we want a limit of 50 accounts only, and no more than that. That is a strict hardline until I say otherwise. And this scraper runs in 2 parts. Part 1 initializes the scrape and gives you a ID, and then you have to wait 5 minutes in order to call the second part, which then will provide the data for you. If after 5 minutes the scrape hasn't finished, wait another 5 minutes, 3 more times until you get the data, or after the 3rd, 4th time and you haven't gotten the data. Once the second flow is successful and you have the data, we also need the Python script to format and clean the lead's name, company name, and so on. We don't want any special characters. It needs to be formatted for code email. Again, this is why we do it piece by piece, because it's very hard to give it all this context and say, hey, one shot me this entire code email system. It's going to go each different step. There is a certain probability of it going in a certain direction. And even if, it does step 1 or 2 correctly, it can go off the rails on step 3, 4, 5, and then those errors tend to compound. So I break it up into small little pieces and then at the end do end-to-end flow. I am a little sick. I have a cold. I'm under the weather. So if anything looks off or sounds off, that's the reason why. but a little bit of sickness does not stop us from building AI agents. We keep building. So it's built it out for us. The next thing we need to do is give it our API keys. So to get our API key, you just have to go into your settings, and then you go into your API and integrations. I'm not going to go there, but then you would just copy and paste the key into your e.env. Now we want to test this initial portion of scraping the LinkedIn list that we have, getting the data and cleaning the data before we get to the enrichment step. Okay, I gave you the API key for Appify. Here is the LinkedIn search URL. I want you to scrape a maximum of 30 leads and add that 30 to the limit parameter in the scraper. You can see that it's found some issues and it's actually self-correcting and self-fixing those issues itself. And it's only doing this because of our agents.md file. Here we go. The scrape has started successfully. So it looks like it got the 30 leads we specified, and it cleaned up the data. Let's take a look to make sure it's up to our standards before moving on to the next step. Can you open up the CSV on my computer for me? I want to check the leads. If we expand this, looks like it did a pretty good job. All the first names are cleaned up. Company names look good. Do see an issue with the fact that we have some caps. The fact that we have some that are all caps, so we have to readjust the cleaning code as well. So we have to tell it that the company names weren't cleaned up correctly. Great job, but the company names were not cleaned up correctly. There are some that are in all caps. Please figure out all of these different edge cases so the data is consistently clean. This is the original spreadsheet, and then this is the updated spreadsheet. So now that this edge case of all caps was discovered, it won't make that same error again. And then this is how the workflows get stronger over time. The more you use them, the more different edge cases and issues come up. The AI then fixes it, and eventually it runs at like 99% throughput without any issues after several iterations. All right, I gave AntiGravity my Prospeo API key. And if you don't know what Prospeo is, it's a service that allows you to enrich email addresses from a LinkedIn Sales Navigator search or from a CSV. So we have a few different endpoints. We have the enrich persons API, or we can bulk enrich. Let's bulk enrich because it's a lot faster. So we're just going to give AntiGravity the screenshots of this page. I gave you the API key for Prospeo. And here is the API documentation for the bulk enrichment. I'd like you to use bulk enrichment on the list we just scraped, but we only want the verified email addresses. We do not want the mobile numbers. So we are hitting a rate limit since we're using this on the free plan. We've enriched 80% of the list. It was able to get the emails for about 80% of them. And all we have to do next is the instantly portion where we add those leads to the cold email platform. So in addition, we've scraped the leads and we've built the scraper. we've built the data cleaning portion, and we've also built the email enrichment portion. The final thing we need to do is add these leads to Instantly, the cold email sending platform, automatically. So let's do. I'll have this test campaign set up, just test, in order to send the leads over, but we have to go and get our API key and do the connection. So let's go into our settings. And you're going to go to integrations, and the API key will be there for you. And we're just going to select all scope. Great. Let's take a look at it Instantly. Awesome. So here we are in Instantly, and we can see that we have all of the emails that were found. They were added automatically to the campaign. So we pretty much have all the steps completed. It took us some time to build it out, but you have to keep in mind the building and the running are two distinct things. Now that it's been built, all we need to do is just give it a LinkedIn sales URL, and it will go ahead and run through the entire flow on its own. And it will then add them automatically to the Instantly campaign. There's a lot more automations you can do on top of this. You can set up a CRM manager. You can create a lead routing system. You can have AI automatically respond to the emails, create Slack notifications. So pretty much the world is your oyster once you've built this initial system out. Let me know in a comment if there's a specific build that you want me to do next. As a reminder, you can get the agents.md file in the description below. And if you're a B2B company making at least 20K a month and you want either book calls on your calendar or you want agentic workflows within your company, there's also a link in the description to book a strategy session with me. I'll see you next time, and I'll see you on the next build.